I'm Dr. Fred Douglas Smith, Jr. With Houston Graduate School of Theology. I'm professor of public theology there and head a new center, the Center for Leadership in Public Theology. And we are so blessed today to have with us Dr. Owen Cardwell. He's in town. Last week we talked with Dr. Virgil Woods and we had an exciting time together, and we're going to continue that conversation today. This Juneteenth.
Yes.
And we've just been experiencing 3 wonderful days of inspiring speeches and programs and initiative, trying to get the movement, revved up and start again. And,
That's right.
And one of the primary authors of that is Dr. Cardwell. So I wanted to find out more about him today and really begin to dig into what he's trying to do and what he's trying to accomplish with us. So tell us about yourself.
Well, it's good to be here. I do want to say that Houston is one of my favorite cities, not just because Dr. Wood is here, but I get a chance to come here from time to time. It's a great city and a joy to be here. I guess I start with January 29, 1962. I was one of 2 African-American students to walk up the steps of E.C. Glass High School in Lynchburg, Virginia, and that began era of school desegregation there in Lynchburg. It so happened that a young pastor had recently come to town to pastor Diamond Hill Baptist Church, which is one of our leading churches, in the person of Dr. Virgil Wood. Dr. Wood and my father became close friends, and of course, because of Dr. Wood's close association with Dr. Martin Luther King, we call him one of Dr. King's lieutenants on SCLC's board. Very quickly, Dr. Wood became the leader of the local civil rights movement. My father at that time was the membership secretary for the NAACP. Later on became the local president. And my father, along with 4 other African-American parents, had sued the school system for desegregation, and that was the culmination of that process. 3 months later, in March, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. came to town in support of the civil rights efforts there, and I had a chance to meet Dr. King.
What was that like?
Well, during those days, of course, there were no Holiday Inns or Marriott hotels for African American travelers in the South to live in, and so very often when they would travel, they would stay in the homes of local residents. And so Dr. King stayed in the home of a local dentist whose daughter was also one of the litigants in the school desegregation, Dr. George Jackson. And so my fondest recollection of that was not so much the meeting in the auditorium at E.C. Glass High School and the rally that took place, but afterwards we went to Dr. Jackson's house, and Dr. King actually sat in the floor with us, and we sang freedom songs.
Wow, that must have been something.
It really, I didn't know it at the time, and to be perfectly honest with you, several years after that, I didn't realize the trajectory that has set my life on.
Okay.
I ended up going to Boston University.
Okay.
At the time that I applied, it wasn't uppermost in my mind that was Dr. King's school. But
when was that? What was the time period on that?
I graduated from Boston University School of Theology in 1976.
Okay.
And
so we were in town at the same time.
is that right?
I was at Harvard from 69 to 73.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you were there during the Boston busing
Oh,
crisis.
yes. Oh, yes.
Well, as a matter of fact, the Boston busing crisis was one of our courses
Okay.
in the BTI, the Boston Theological Institute.
Right, I work with
and,
them, too.
And as part of my coursework, I ended up being a bus monitor in that busing situation. But not only did that take place, but when I did get my PhD, Dr. Virgil Wood again was instrumental in that. He had helped Union Institute and University in Cincinnati to develop a specialization in King studies, and they were also offering a PhD with a track in creative and ethical leadership. Right. All of that spoke to me. So I ended up going to Union Institute and University, getting my doctorate in leadership studies with a specialization in King.
When I first met you, that's what I thought you were teaching, because I was told you I had sent at least 2 or 3 students to that university to get their PhD.
Yes.
One, Barbara from Pittsburgh, I'm trying to remember her last name, she received her PhD focusing around youth ministries, working with Martin Luther King. Gwen, who didn't finish, but went there. But now one of my best students called me up not long ago. You mentioned Virgil's name. Doug Walker, was my student at Wesley, Urban Fellow. He's in that program right now. I recommend that program to everybody.
I highly recommend the program.
Yeah.
And then I was honored to get an award for my PhD, and I was the second Virgil A. Wood Award recipient for the work in the King Studies program. So Martin Luther King has had a profound impact on my life.
Okay. One of the things that we focus on here is the concept of the beloved community. What does that mean to you?
Beloved community to me means moving from this idea of, I guess, commodification to a sense of everyone in the community having value and everyone in the community contributing to the value of the community. That's the beloved community for me.
Yeah, of course, King's studied personalism there when he was at Boston. That's one of his primary things with the worth of the human individual.
That's
right. Image of God. That's great. So what are you doing now?
Well, I pastor.
Okay.
I've been in the pastoral ministry for 48 years. So I pastor New Canaan International Church in Richmond, Virginia. I am the executive director of our nonprofit, which is called Heroes and Dreams Academy. We work with families that are in at-risk environments. I don't call families at risk. I don't call children at risk. The truth of the matter is that we're all at risk to some extent or another, but it is the environment that puts them at risk. So we work with families in at-risk environment. And I recently have been appointed as a distinguished chair in education, the Rose Shule Distinguished Professor of Education at what used to be Lynchburg College, is now the University of Lynchburg.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you about that in a minute, but I want to go back to Heroes and Dreams. How do you get that name? I worked with a student in D.C. who had graduated from Howard, young man, just being in the program. His mother was a good friend of mine, and I sat on their board, called Dreaming Out Loud.
Yeah.
It's the name of the program where, again, he worked with young people. Right out of Howard, work with young people, in communities of risk.
Yeah.
To do it. So tell me more about your nonprofit.
Well, the whole concept of Heroes and Dreams actually came out of my dissertation and some of the work that we were doing around that. My dissertation was what they call an autoethnography, and it was an autoethnography of the development of a leader. What I did was I ended up being one of the youth leaders for the civil rights movement in Lynchburg. Wasn't just a school desegregator. I ended up going to jail in Danville, ended up participating with Dr. Wood in the desegregation of two of the movie theaters, S&W cafeteria, several other facilities there, Woolworths lunch counters, those kind of things. And so it was kind of a cathartic study in how that leadership process took place. I became introduced in my leadership studies of the work called The Heroic Journey. Made that application, looked at the stories around not just the heroic journey, but around heroic ideation. How do people select their heroes? And then we began to talk about how do you become the hero of your own story? How do you reframe the narrative
Yes.
as you move through the process? We added to that, because my PhD was actually in interdisciplinary studies, we added to that integral theory, which is by Wilbur, and we added to that theory U by Otto Scharmer. Integral theory was a way to take a helicopter view of a person's life so that we could begin to help people to become integrated selves. And the Scharmer piece, Theory U, was really about change and human development. And so we used those theories and came together with this whole concept. And out of that, we created Heroes and Dreams Academy.
Okay, I want to spend whole too much. With this, can you in a simple way tell me then how do you make heroes and dreams? What are some of the principles, just real simple, that you deduce from your study that help to shape your nonprofit?
Well, the heroic journey is really 3 stages
Okay.
and about 19 different steps.
Okay.
What we discovered is that the author of the heroic journey escapes my mind right now,
Right.
but it's very easy for people to Google. So I say to the audience, Google it. But there are 3 stages and 19 steps. What the developer of this theory, he captured in 1949. He captured all of the hero stories that he could find in the nation, in the world, from all various eras, and he began to look at hero stories, and he realized that the hero stories all had certain commonalities. So we took this idea of the heroic journey, and I began to make application to say, well, all journeys don't necessarily take heroic trajectories. Many journeys take what we might call a victim's trajectory. Many journeys might take what we call initially a villain's trajectory, and then many journeys take a heroic trajectory. But until the last page is written, the story is not over. So you have an opportunity to reframe your life narrative. If we can teach people the various steps and stages of the journey, they can then use that as a process by which to identify the various steps. Then it doesn't become a reactive process, it becomes a proactive process.
Okay, and you saw your life in that context.
I saw my life in that context.
Okay, all right, fantastic.
I was able to use that as a diagnostic to look at how my life had developed.
Right, and so you'll be able to build a program based upon that,
Precisely.
using those steps and so forth. That's excellent. One of the things that I talk about in the beloved community is that the beloved community is a community of interpretation.
Yes.
Coming from like Charles, the pragmatic philosopher, Parson, anyway. And so that it's important to, wherever your story is, when you enter into that community, it can be reinterpreted as a story of hope.
Precisely.
And so that you're always in the process of helping people to correct the direction of their narrative.
Yes. Yes.
Based upon some narrative mega story. That's great. So tell me more about you at Lynchburg College or University now.
Yeah, it used to be Lynchburg College. It's Lynchburg University. Now, people that know about Lynchburg
That's the first question I was gonna ask
get a
you.
lot of things confused. And it does not help that the acronyms for these various schools. Lynchburg has essentially 5 four-year colleges and universities. There's Sweetbriar College, which is a small private women's college. There's Randolph-Macon, which used to be a women's college and is now a college. But then there are the three that people get confused. There is what used to be called Virginia Seminary, which was an African-American institution that was primarily used to develop preachers. It was the sister school of Virginia Union University in Richmond in a convoluted way that we won't go into. But Virginia Seminary changed its name a few years ago to Virginia University of Lynchburg. Then you have Liberty University. Now, Virginia University of Lynchburg, of course, VUL. Then you have Liberty University, which many people are familiar with now because of its fantastic growth. It's one of the largest, evangelical schools in the world, and because of Jerry Falwell. Liberty University is LU. Lynchburg College was developed by Disciples of Christ, and for as long as they were LC, there was no question about it. But now they are the University of Lynchburg. They're staying away from that acronym UL, and so all of the information that's printed about them now either refers to them as Lynchburg or the University of Lynchburg. I am teaching at the latter school.
And what are you teaching? You're a distinguished professor. And so
my official title is Rose Shule, Distinguished Professor of Education. I teach two leadership courses, one at the master's level and one at the PhD level. But my primary responsibilities are more administrative. Number one, the city of Lynchburg has a big poverty initiative that they undertook a little over a year ago, and Lynchburg has the second highest poverty rate in the state of Virginia. And so Lynchburg College, or University of Lynchburg, was the primary education partner in the poverty initiative. So I am taking on that role to be the university's representative in that process.
Well, say more about the poverty initiative. How the university fits that role.
Well, the poverty initiative was a brainchild of the mayor and the vice mayor of the city. They came together and they were looking at all of the issues that were created. Lynchburg has a poverty rate of just shy of 25%. 90% of all school-age children, African-American school-age children, are on free and reduced lunch. There are almost intractable pockets of poverty in the city. And so a huge community meeting was called together. Over 500 people came to the meeting. They began to parse out the various what we now call health indicators, in the community, and focus groups were developed around each of these health indicators. Naturally, Lynchburg College, because their initial focus was around teacher education, they gravitated towards the education process. So that's how they came to be partners in that.
Well, we know that, this is the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King.
Yes.
In Memphis. In fact, I worked in Memphis for a time, and we always, really began to think about his move from civil rights, and really focusing on poverty, and of course that was the time when they were beginning the Poor People's Campaign.
Right.
That was focused on it. And right now, when you talk about health indicators, the number one health indicator is poverty.
Yes.
In fact, the number one indicator of just about everything that gives issues, problems, and so forth, really centers around the economy and around poverty.
Right.
So so what brings you to Houston? Especially at this time. Juneteenth. The 50th anniversary of Martin Luther King assassination. All that.
One of the things that brought me to Houston,
Quadrant General, 400 years, yeah.
One of the things that brought me to Houston was a 57-year relationship with Dr. Virgil Wood.
Yes.
Whenever he says come, I come. Strategically, Juneteenth celebrations were about to take place. We just observed the 50th anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King. We had participated in discussions and celebration, worship services and observations around that. Next year will be the 400th year anniversary of the first slaves being brought to the shores of America. So all of this came together in a very strategic time. Dr. Wood in his time here has been putting together a wonderful coalition of people that are concerned about helping to create the beloved community right here in Houston. And so we were invited here to be part of a 3-day discussion, strategy session around how we can move the needle forward.
So tell me about your program and what you've been doing. I've attended some of those, and Miss outstanding speakers, Bishop Dixon, Francois?
Yeah,
The
Willie
young man,
Francois.
Willie Francois, and others.
Yes.
You know, so what did you hope to accomplish by this?
Well, Dr. Wood asked that question. What would look like success to you
Yeah.
when this is over?
Yes.
I don't know what the other two told him, but what I said to him is, I would be thrilled if we came away from these 3 days with an agreement around a working model that would be transportable, not just for Richmond and Houston and Lynchburg, but that we could take to all the urban centers in the nation.
You want to give us just a synopsis or just a cap of what that, have you got that working model? I mean, what are you proposing something right now? I saw one presentation that you did that was very interesting. There's an institute that you're trying to develop. Say more about that.
Yeah, and some of that came out of work that we've already been doing. So in order to give you some context for that, let me tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing.
Good.
With our nonprofit in Richmond, we've been working with the police department there, for example. Virginia leads the nation in incarcerating children in school.
Wow.
The next 2 states are not even close. And so we had a new police chief that came in about 3 years ago. He wanted to try to figure out what was happening. And so he wanted to take a look at the statistics for the kids that had been arrested in the previous school year. And there were over 700 kids that had been arrested in the Richmond Public Schools. He parsed out the information to see, what acts were so criminal that even if they hadn't been committed in school, if they had been committed on the street, police would have arrested. And it turned out that roughly about 27% of those were serious enough crimes that they would have been arrested anyhow. The other 73% were under disorderly conduct. When we really began to look at what disorderly conduct meant, it was a myriad of things that really came down to a teacher's interpretation, a resource officer's interpretation, and in Virginia, some of the resource officers are actually police. And so once the policeman is in the school and a policeman views a disorderly conduct situation with a child, because they are police, they have to report the crime that's taking place. And so when you and I were coming up and we would get into a fight in school, we might be called to the principal's office, might get a paddle on the hand, but these kids, both of them would be charged with assault.
Wow.
And so we began to work with the police department to look at alternatives to actually incarcerate. Now, those kids might go to court and those, crimes, so to speak, would be tossed out. But we wanted to provide alternative sentencing. So kids began to participate in a program that actually a Houston resident and professor at the University of Houston, what's his name?
Dave Peterson?
No. Everett.
Everett?
Yeah. Everett Penn. Dr. Everett Penn had developed this program called the TAPS Academy. And so we invited Everett to come and to share that with our police department. And from that, the police department and Heroes and Dreams created this alternative program where police would serve as mentors to the kids. That's one of the things we did. We worked with some of the schools, low-performing schools, with ninth grade academies, particularly with boys, providing mentors for them. And we worked with children who had incarcerated parents, providing mentors for them. So with all the different work that we were doing, we worked in Danville, Virginia, with alternative education program there, trying to provide opportunities for kids to be able to have mentors and to move beyond the barriers that were keeping them from performing. All of this was under the umbrella of Achievement Gap. Achievement Gap is a real misnomer, because the whole idea of an achievement gap ends up blaming the victim, that it's a matter of them not being able to perform. We began to use the emerging nomenclature of opportunity gap, and we began to focus this around the concept of an opportunity gap, that it wasn't that kids could not learn their academics, it was the fact that there were other things taking place in the community that were centered around these health indicators. And so we needed to have the community become more vested in the education of our children by recognizing that education is not simply the responsibility of the public school system.
That's fantastic. We're going to pick this up, in our next show. We're going to ask Dr. Virgil Woods, to join us.
Okay.
And I'd like to continue discussion right where you are now, because education is probably the most critical thing. Thank you for being with us today. We appreciate you being with us,
Thank you
Dr.
for having
Dr.
us.
Cardwell, and we'll be talking to you again in our next session.
All right, thank you.